Boston Police Department detectives Nick Walker and Bobby Hayes stole a chest full of gold found during a drug bust, and Nick buries his share of the gold in his backyard, intending to use it to create a better life for himself and his wife, Julia. However, he regrets his decision and informs Hayes he intends to return the gold. Later, during a raid on a warehouse, Nick and Hayes get into a shootout with criminals, and Hayes kills Nick to prevent him from returning the gold, framing one of the criminals for the murder. While ascending through a tunnel in the sky to the afterlife, Nick is pulled into the office of Mildred Proctor, head of the Boston Police Department Rest in Peace Department, R.I.P.D., an agency that recruits deceased police officers to patrol the afterlife and capture deados, spirits that failed to cross over and return to Earth as monstrous ghosts who are capable of great destruction. Nick agrees to join the R.I.P.D. after Proctor explains that it would stave off a potentially negative final judgment for at least a century, and meets his new partner, Roy Pulsifer, a crusty ex-U.S. Marshal who lived in the 1800s. Nick and Roy return to Earth to attend Nick's funeral, where Nick learns R.I.P.D. officers are assigned avatars, which is how humans perceive them. Nick's is an elderly Chinese man, Jerry Chen, and Roy's is an attractive Russian woman, Opal Pavlenko. After failing to communicate with Julia, Nick accompanies Roy to the apartment of a suspect, Stanley Nolicki, who resorts to his monstrous form via cumin powder and tries to escape, resulting in Roy pushing Nick out a 20-story building. Pieces of gold identical to the ones Nick stole are found in Nolicki's possession and is eventually killed by Roy with a soul-killer bullet that erases him from the cosmos, and logged into evidence. Nick is suspicious that Nolicki was trying to hide the gold from them even when he was about to die. He persuades Roy to follow up on the investigation. Nick and Roy then meet with Elliot, Roy's informant and a Red Sox fan, who Nick dupes into leading them to his contact, revealed to be Hayes. Nick and Roy follow him to Nick's old house, where Hayes retrieves Nick's share of the gold, leading Julia to believe that Nick was corrupt. After a brief confrontation between Roy and Nick over the stolen gold, they tail Hayes to a bus depot where he gives the gold to a large ginger-side-burned deado named Pulaski. They try to interrogate Pulaski, but he's too strong for them. He transforms into a hulking monster and takes off into the city with the gold. The ensuing chase draws unwanted attention to the living humans Bostonians and causes a panic. When the two return to R.I.P.D. headquarters, Eternal Affairs tells Proctor that the gold fragments are part of an ancient weapon called the Staff of Jericho, which has the power to reverse the flow of souls from Earth to the afterlife. Eternal Affairs also orders Proctor to remove Roy and Nick from the case, suspend them from active duty due to the exposure caused by the monster's rampage, and they schedule a hearing is scheduled for the next day. If things go bad for Roy and Nick, which they most likely will, they will both be erased. Sad from this turn of events, Nick walks away because he has somewhere more important to be. He tries one last time to reveal himself to Julia while she jogs at a local track. While she's still unable to recognize him, there's something in his alter ego's touch that allows her to momentarily feel his presence. Confused, she runs off. Roy's followed him to the track and the two decide to stop whatever Bobby's planning. They find Bobby at his house and discover he's a deado. They arrest him, and he goes in a bit too easily. One of the items they confiscate from him is half a sphere. When the evidence clerk, Chris Everett, tosses it in a bin with another half sphere that was recently brought in, the pieces merge into one and it releases a pulse that freezes the whole department. With Roy and Nick unable to move, Bobby and a group of deados steal the remainder of the gold and flee just as the affects of the pulse wear off. Roy and Nick then take chase. Bobby and his minions take the pieces to the top of the Commonwealth building and assemble the Staff of Jericho there. They intend to use it to remain in the living world indefinitely. Bobby has sent more minions to kidnap Julia. When she arrives, he stabs. Her blood activates the staff and the vortex appears in the sky. More vortices appear on the ground and begin tearing the city apart. Nick and Roy have to kill all of Bobby's minions before they can take him on and destroy the staff. Roy tries to take apart the staff while Nick fights Bobby. When Roy drops a city garbage truck on the staff, it breaks back into pieces. The main vortex reverses its pull and the dead once again go back into the sky. This distracts Bobby long enough for Nick to use his one last bullet in his soul eraser to shoot Bobby in the head, killing him for good. As Julia nears death, time slows for her like it did for Nick when he died. This brings her close enough to death to see Nick one last time as himself and not as an elderly Asian man. He tells her he loves her and kisses her goodbye in a tearful farewell. Nick encourages her to continue living for both of them. Later in a hospital, Proctor tells Nick that Julia will survive. Eternal Affairs allows her to reinstate the two but adds 53 years to Roy's term, partly as punishment and partly because Proctor has a thing for Roy. As one final reward, Roy gives Nick a new appearance. Unfortunately for him, he's now a young Girl Scout, Piper Mackenzie Harris's. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.